Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 101-73, an old school score against the Phoenix Suns, LA's second win in a row, back-to-back blowouts on back-to-back nights. They improved to 52-29, and with Houston losing to Minnesota tonight and the Lakers winning, LA has secured home court advantage in round one. They will either be the number 3 or 4 seed and will either host number 6 Minnesota or number 5 Houston. Right now, the top 6 in the West, 1 and 2 and 5 and 6 are locked up. And it's now between LA and Denver who's going to finish 3 and who's going to finish 4. So this will all come down to Sunday's results, which is setting up some significant stakes on Sunday. And the Lakers, after a couple of ugly losses to Dallas and Oklahoma City, they've bounced back here over the past couple of days. They've gone now 2-2 since Luka and AR have gone down with injuries, and a couple of blowout wins. I think some appropriate caveats given the level of competition they were playing against, but nonetheless, LeBron is playing the best basketball of the season at the perfect time for LA. They really need him to carry them right now, and he has broad shoulders for a reason, as he likes to remind us, and we're seeing it. LeBron is carrying them, and guys are stepping up. Luke Kennard is playing his best basketball of the season and has flashed a level of playmaking and point guard skills that I just didn't know that he had. We saw it sometimes as a secondary playmaker, but to do it as a full-time, bringing the ball up the floor, getting the Lakers into the offense, and helping LeBron run the show as the number 2, just did not have that on my bingo card for the Lakers season. But here we are. The Lakers are finding a way to survive, and if things click at the right time, potentially advance. But we will touch on that when we get into the different playoff scenarios here. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me tonight. And apologies for not going live last night. I think most of you know, but for those who don't, my son is in town this weekend, so was spending some time with him, took the night off, and we had a fun night of movies and Fortnite and pizza and candy. So I did not watch the game. I watched the game today, so we'll have some thoughts on that as well. I don't think there's too much to take away. This to me is similar to beating a Nets team or a Wizards team or one of those bottom feeders in terms of just who Golden State had available. But I will be touching on Lakers Warriors during the takeaway portion. But was there tonight and we'll have a lot of thoughts on tonight's win and just where the Lakers are at right now. So again, shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to the chat. All right, let's get into it. So Buha's big picture is flickers of light at the end of the tunnel. I'm not quite to the light at the end of the tunnel portion of optimism here. Just starting to have some flickers, just seeing something in the distance. Not quite sure what it is yet. We'll see how things play out for the Lakers, and especially I think game 1 will be revealing to a large degree. But JJ said after, in light of the Luka and Austin injuries, JJ had 3 general goals for the Lakers. 1, to stay healthy, which they've largely done outside of this Jaxson Hayes foot situation. But that aside, and it doesn't seem to be serious. It seems like he'll be back either on Sunday or for game 1 of the playoffs. The Lakers have maintained their health with the current group available. He also said they wanted to find a 9-man rotation. I think they're close. I think they have 8 guys now locked in. I think Jared Vanderbilt has earned that 8th spot. And now it's just a matter of who is the 9th man. And I think it could be potentially matchup dependent, whether the Lakers are in the 3 spot facing Minnesota or the 4 spot facing Houston. Both of those teams have similar makeups. So I am trending more toward a bigger option, but it also depends what the Lakers do with their 15th roster spot, which opened up today. And then JJ also wanted the Lakers to figure out a new and hopefully temporary identity. And I think they've taken some strides in that, right? Like they're not quite there. And again, I think we have to acknowledge the caveats of the level of competition they played. Golden State, without Steph, without Jimmy Butler, without Porzingis, without Moody, etc. Like that was basically the Santa Cruz Warriors. And that was a team that did not have a starting level or even borderline bench level, like the Anthony Melton or I mean, it was just not, Gary Payton II. Like they just did not have a lot there in terms of offensive initiators and creators. So I don't want to take away too much from that game. And then tonight, going into the game, no Devin Booker, and then Colin Gillespie and Grayson Allen both go out in the first half with injuries. So that's Phoenix's top 3 ball handlers all out, and we see their offense is a complete mess without those 3 guys leading the show. And of course, on the Lakers side, no Luka, no Austin, no Jaxson tonight. Luke Kennard was questionable. He ends up playing. The reason I'm highlighting more the opponent injuries is just because the Lakers don't have Luka and Austin coming back anytime soon, right? We're talking mid first round at the earliest. So if they're going to advance, like there is a significant step up in competition going from this Suns team or the Warriors to a Minnesota or a Houston, both teams looking like they're going to be at full strength going into that game 1. Huge step up in competition. I think multiple tiers, multiple levels. So that is something to factor in here. But the Lakers I think are going to blow out Utah on Sunday and go into the playoffs with some momentum and likely 3 blowout wins in a row, 3 straight wins. And I think things are trending in the right direction for this group. So they've been able to maintain their health. I think they are closing in on a 9-man rotation. And I think they figured some things out in terms of their identity. And it was on display in that Dallas game. I think the biggest issue with the Dallas game was the transition defense, the defense overall. They gave up 134 points, the most points Dallas had scored in 6 weeks. And then the OKC game was a disaster, but no LeBron, and that spiraled early. But, that was expected. It's OKC. The last couple games, though, like the Lakers started to figure out some things. And I think in a way, having some easier competition is good for the morale boost and also good for cleaning some things up and testing some things and just figuring out what you want to do and what's going to work. Like if the Lakers were playing, Denver and San Antonio and Minnesota or Houston down the stretch, it's like, it's good competition, but it's not necessarily like building a rhythm or optimism. And I think the Lakers needed some optimism, especially coming off of, the first OKC loss, losing Luka and Austin. A big theme for JJ the last couple days in his press conferences has been talking about the emotional toll of this past week and how deflating and discouraging the past week has been. And he even acknowledged in his pregame press conference tonight, and I feel like it was kind of a little shot at Denver there a little bit, but he acknowledged that he's like, we know, like we're just putting it out there. Everybody wants to play us in round 1. Anyone who's playing us in round 1 thinks they're going to be advancing. And like, we're the team in the top 6 that everybody wants to play. And there's even some teams that are resting their guys to try to potentially set up to play us because Denver ends up winning tonight. It's like Denver's bench versus OKC's third string. OKC rested 10 guys tonight. They literally rested their top 10 players. And then Denver rested their entire starting group. And the thinking from afar was that Denver was trying to tank their way into the 4-5 matchup and ideally play the Lakers because the Lakers, there's a chance they could have lost tonight potentially. They were actually, I believe, underdogs going into the game. And then Houston was playing at home against Minnesota. No Gobert, no Randall. I believe no Naz Reid as well. So Houston was favored to win that game. Anthony Edwards returning on a minutes restriction. Jaden McDaniels still on a minutes restriction. So it was like a very decimated Wolves team against the Houston team that was favored, and yet Houston lost that game. Minnesota won. That flipped things and pushed Houston most likely to 5, and then with the Lakers winning, it secured them in 5. But Denver's play got backfired because Denver ended up winning the game. Again, we don't know for sure. David Adelman, Nuggets head coach, was asked about the decision to rest guys, and he said that anyone who's casting any motivation onto Denver's decision just doesn't know what they're talking about, because he said, like, sure, on paper it could look nice to play the Lakers, but if Luka returns in the middle of the series, you don't want to be playing Luka or the Lakers in round 1. Then, like, Houston's been on a win streak that was snapped tonight, and Minnesota and Denver have had some heavyweight bouts over the last couple of years. So he said that. I think it was a little lip service, but Denver seemed to at least not care if they won tonight, and they still ended up winning convincingly. But it was more of a battle of like second string versus third string. But I say all this to bring it back to, like, the Lakers, I think, are starting to find something here, and that is encouraging going into the playoffs. And what they're finding is LeBron, as he reminded that courtside fan in Dallas, was put on the shelf for a bit, right? And I think in the preceding 2 weeks going into the OKC game, LeBron was averaging 15.5 points or right around there. And it was clearly the third option behind Luka and Austin. And I think he had embraced the role and adjusted to it well, but was not playing his best basketball of the season statistically. And now we've seen with Luka and Austin out, LeBron's averaging 28 points per game over the 3 games that he's played. He's only played in 3 of the 4. And he's been incredible here. Like, especially these last 2 nights, he was by far the best player on the floor. It was not close in either matchup. And he dominated and controlled both games to such a degree that it just gave the Lakers such a margin for error. Because the Golden State game, first 3 quarters, I think LA's up, 8 or 9 going into the 4th quarter. And they were outplaying Golden State, but it wasn't the prettiest game. A lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy basketball, and I think some lackadaisical stretches defensively. But LeBron was so great that it just didn't matter. And then he helped propel LA with that early 4th quarter run. Golden State, both to start the 3rd and 4th quarters, just coughs up the ball a billion times. And that ends up leading to a bunch of Lakers transition opportunities. And LA just stretches the lead from, again, like 8 or 9 into 20 points within a couple minutes in the 4th quarter. And then tonight, kind of similar thing, but earlier in the game where Lakers get out to the big lead. Then Phoenix responds with a 12-2 run to open the second quarter. So they're down 9. They end up changing Rasheer Fleming's 2-pointer to a 3-pointer. So it goes from 10 to 9 going into the second. Then Phoenix responds with a 12-2 run to take a 1-point lead. It was 7 minutes left in the second quarter. And it looked like the Lakers had just let go of the rope. They were not penetrating offensively. It was a lot of horseshoe basketball, just side to side, no one getting past the 3-point line or really past like 18 feet. And then defensively, Phoenix running on them, crashing the offensive glass, killing them on the offensive glass. And it was like LA would have a nice initial possession of defense, and then everyone would just turn and stand, and like 3 Suns players would crash, and there'd be 4 Lakers players in the paint, and no one's boxing out or making any contact. So that it was teetering there for a little bit, right? And then LeBron comes back in, Lakers go on a run. They go into halftime up 9, and then stretch it in the 3rd quarter, and then just turns into an all around blowout in the second half. It becomes they outscore them 44-25. So LA didn't even play that well offensively in the second half. It was more so the defense forcing turnovers. And so with regard to their identity now, LeBron has been the queen on the chessboard offensively. LeBron is being used in a variety of ways, whether it's bringing the ball up and initiating that way, or Luke Kennard bringing the ball up and then initiating some sort of horns action or post action for LeBron. He's operating at the top of the floor. He's operating at the elbow. He's operating in the post. He's operating on the wing. And a lot of times, possession to possession, he's wearing multiple hats, and he's going from ball handler to screener to cutter to post up threat. And just his versatility has been on display here these last couple of games in a real way. And I think the frustrating or sort of sad angle with this is like LeBron, we know, has a history of progressively ramping up throughout the course of the season. And there's a reason why he's historically been a playoff riser. And there's a reason why his teams have largely overachieved in terms of when you look at some of the rosters or supporting cast he's had. And a big part of it is his approach to the regular season. And he talks about the season in multiple phases. And his goal is to be hitting the peak of the season at the end of the season and going into the playoffs. And I think there'd obviously been a lot of chatter and doubt about whether LeBron could ramp up to a certain level and whether he should be the number 3 or the number 2 or whatever role the Lakers had in mind for him. And I think he has shattered all of that, all that noise, all that doubt here over these last few games, and reminded everybody, like, as he said in Dallas, they put me on the shelf, but I could do a lot more than just being on the shelf. And I think we've seen that. And I just think about the version of Luka that we saw right before the injury, the version of Austin that he had been in March, and you combine those two players with this version of LeBron. Of course, there's going to need to be sacrifice with all three. And with the way things had shaped up, it was LeBron who was the one sacrificing the most. But I also talked about, like, in certain matchups, certain teams, I think you lean more into LeBron or you lean more into Austin, and like you could still, there's enough pie for everybody to get a few slices. And this version of LeBron, I do think with a healthy Luka and Austin, like against the San Antonio in round 2, I think that would have been a really tough competitive series. Against OKC, I think they're a different beast. The Lakers have just not played well again. Like, I just think it's a really bad matchup for them, and they really struggle with their ball pressure and defensive intensity and their speed. Like, just the collective speed to me is a little bit too much for LA. But I think had they not gotten hurt, I think the Lakers would have held on to the 3 seed. And I don't know like how this version of LeBron would have been unlocked because he was in a certain role prior to the injuries. But if they could have figured out a way to use him more the way that he's been used recently, I just think it would have really raised the Lakers. Now, look, maybe Luka comes back middle of round 1 or late round 1, and maybe the Lakers advance and Austin returns round 2. But that's been kind of the sad part to this, has been like this version of LeBron. I think is definitely playing definitely better than he was not too long ago. And of course, part of that's the usage and the role, and like, but he's showing like he could have done more and was partly ramping up to do more. And I just, yeah, I mean, we'll see if we get to see the full strength squad at some point in the postseason, but that's been something that's really stood out to me. But I think the Lakers have really, especially these last couple matchups, leveraged their size well, and you're seeing whether it's LeBron in the post, there's been more Jake LaRavia in the post, Rui Hachimura in the post, getting mismatches with DA and some deep seals. There's just been a better leveraging of, we're going to play big, we're going to be smash mouth basketball, and it's sort of what has worked with the LeBron bench groups, right? Because going into tonight, they had a +9 net rating, LeBron on, Austin and Luka off. A lot of those groups have been more defensive minded, more transition focused, and playing some bigger groups, right? So one of the best general like lineup archetypes with that has been like Marcus Smart, Jared Vanderbilt, LeBron, and 2 big men. But you could also put Jake LaRavia in there. You can maybe even put Rui in there as like, the guy you're maybe going zone or whatever, but you can play these like jumbo lineups where the second shortest Laker is like 6'8", and you're switching everything, or you're playing zone and you're pressuring and you're getting out in transition. And I think we've seen that more so with some of the bench groups rather than the starting group, but the starting group has had some of that too. And like outside of Luke right now with Marcus, Marcus returned tonight, came off the bench in a limited role. It was on a minutes restriction, which JJ said will ramp up Sunday against Utah. Like the Lakers are starting, even Luke Kennard, like 6'3", 6'4", but everyone else, Jake LaRavia is the second smallest Laker on the floor, and he's 6'7", 240, 235, right? Like it's a pretty big lineup. And so having all that collective size should help with the rebounding. Did not help with the rebounding tonight, but in theory, it gives the Lakers some sort of physical advantage that they don't always have. Now, I think that the starters typically have a similar advantage, just because if you're replacing like Jake or Rui with Luka, they're basically the same size, and then Austin's actually bigger than Luke, so you like downsized a little bit. But I think in general, the rotation has shifted toward being bigger and playing some of these like 3 or 4 forward lineups, and I think that's been a positive thing. And then really the defensive playmaking has stood out. Like it was not there against Dallas, and it was not there against OKC, but these last couple of games, LA's been able to ramp up the pressure. They're getting beat off the dribble a ton, but they're able to recover and make up with that with the slapping at the ball, poking at the ball, and just their rotations and activity. So I think there's been some things to like. Now, I will close the loop with this. Like I think, again, playing Houston or Minnesota in round 1, game 1, in a playoff setting, much different beast comparatively to Dallas or Golden State decimated, or Phoenix without their top 3 ball handlers. Like it's just different level of competition. But I think the Lakers are starting to figure something out. And I will say, especially with this version of LeBron, I think if he's playing like this in a playoff series, and I don't have any reason to believe he isn't capable of that, like he can go toe to toe with, especially in the Houston series, I think, Kevin Durant or Alperen Şengün. I would say Anthony Edwards, the version of him we've seen the last couple postseasons, is at that like top 5 level. I don't know if LeBron can get to that level still. Maybe. I'm not writing it off. I'm just saying, like, the last couple of postseasons from Ant, we've seen him lead the team to the conference finals, and like, that he's been at a very, very high level. But I'll say this, like, this version of LeBron is at, I think, an all-NBA level. And it's been a few games, so we'll see how things maintain into the playoffs. But if they get this version of him and he's playing at like a 3rd-team all-NBA level, they have at least a shot, in my opinion, to extend the series. Now, can they beat Houston or Minnesota? I think it's very unlikely. But can they win a game, maybe even 2, and extend it and give Luka a shot to return in the series? I think that's looking possible. So, I just think that there's been a lot to be encouraged by over the last couple of days. In terms of notable performers, so talked about LeBron, 28 points, 6 rebounds, 12 assists, 4 steals. The defensive activity, the getting out in transition, the attacking mismatches, and the functioning in a variety of ways. Just another incredible game for LeBron. That's back-to-back. I mean, really 3 straight, factoring the Dallas game. He didn't play in the OKC game, but he's just playing at, like, you look at the efficiency, 12 assists to 2 turnovers, 10 for 16 shooting, 2 for 2 on threes. Only blemish, if you want to nitpick something, is the 6 for 9 at the free throw line. But he started this game setting a tone. He had 20 points and 5 assists in the first half. So you saw in the second half, he shifted more into facilitator mode with guys cutting off of him, and with all the defensive attention that Phoenix was sending at him, he just did a brilliant job picking apart their defense. Also, what stands out to me is, like, the one thing the Lakers I think have to figure out here, and haven't, in my opinion, quite been able to figure out, is the non-LeBron minutes. Because you even look at tonight, with LeBron on the floor, LA outscores Phoenix by 27. They win this game by 28. So that means in the 16 minutes without LeBron, they go +1. But again, against a higher level of competition, I haven't loved the non-LeBron minutes. And I think Marcus being back will help with that. I almost wonder if you have to lean into Marcus and Luke just to right the ship offensively and just make sure you have a certain level of playmaking and ball handling and shot creation. But that would be the only thing is like, I am pretty concerned with the non-LeBron minutes, but that might only be 6, 8, 10 minutes a night. And it is on the Lakers now to figure that out over the next playoffs start in 8 days. It's crazy. So, I mean, really a week. We're about to hit midnight. So, yeah, it's Lakers have a week to figure this out. But I'm curious to see how they handle the non-LeBron minutes. Then Luke Kennard, 19 points, 3 assists, 3 steals, 6 for 12 shooting, 2 for 4 on threes, 5 for 5 at the free throw line. He just continues to be a mid-range assassin, and from a playmaking perspective, was obviously not at the same level as he had been at these last few games, but that also coincided with Marcus Smart returning and Marcus Smart taking on some more ball handling and usage and playmaking. You saw Marcus had 7 assists off the bench, but Luke, we'll see whatever the offseason hits, but whatever the offseason hits, assuming he continues this level of play or similar into the playoffs, like Luke is playing himself into a bigger contract, and he's showing something within his skill set that we had seen flashes of, but again, I think him doing some of the secondary ball handling and playmaking stuff he had done, comparing that to what he's doing now, two totally different levels. And if Luke continues to be this like starting and starting within the context of like this current group, I don't think he is a starter, but like he's playing like a starter. And if he's averaging like 15 points, 3 rebounds and 5 assists, 6 assists in this role, that's a dude who's, I think, playing his way into he's definitely played his way into at least that $8 to $10 million contract, assuming he can withstand this. And if he keeps this up and the Lakers potentially win a round or even have like a competitive showing and he's their second or third best player in that series, he could be earning double-digit millions. Like the playoffs are where you earn your contract, right or wrong. The playoffs are where you earn it. So if he continues this, he's in for like the Lakers are gonna have a tough situation on their hands where they could have Marcus, Rui, and Luke all commanding 10 plus million, and then they got to figure out who they want to prioritize. Speaking of Rui, I think he continues to thrive with more usage and just in this role that he's been empowered in now. 13 points, 4 for 8 shooting, 2 for 3 on threes, 3 for 4 on free throws. The only thing with him continues to be the rebounding, which I like. He had been doing better last going into this game. I think Golden State, it could have been a little bit better tonight. It could have been a little bit better, but Rui is playing well. Jake LaRavia did Jake LaRavia things. Only took 1 shot tonight. I would like to see him be a little bit more aggressive offensively, but I thought defensively, the 2 steals, some deflections and rotations and defending multiple positions. Like with how he's been shooting, I mean, he obviously shot very well against Golden State, and that's where I'm kind of almost aggregating those performances together to some degree. I think he's been shooting like a little bit better lately, but it's still a swing factor as to his ultimate role with this team, whether he's a starter or coming off the bench. DA was not the same performance as he had against the Warriors. 10 points, 5 rebounds, 4 for 8 shooting. Offensively, I thought he was fine. Defensively, I still think gets beat off the dribble a lot and unable to properly contest in those scenarios. I think a bit late on rotations. And then I think the biggest thing tonight was the lack of boxing out, and just he actually would have some of those times where he'd corral a player and then just turn and not put any contact on a body. And I thought he was one of the primary culprits with that. Then off the bench, Marcus Smart made his return. 6 points, 5 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 1 block, played 18 minutes, played into garbage time to, I think, get his usage up a little bit, get his offensive confidence back up, although Marcus is never lacking for confidence. But I thought at first looked a little like he was trying to find his rhythm and like a little rusty, but then he eased into the game pretty quickly and looked like Marcus. And had that stretch there. I believe it was in the third quarter where he had a couple of baskets, and then had the steal into the assist to Vando for the dunk, and just doing Marcus things, diving on the ground for loose balls, pressuring the ball, being a quarterback defensively in both man coverages and zone coverages. I just thought like Lakers really missed him, and I think he'll go back to starting. I don't know who's going to come out between Rui or Jake. I think there's offensive and defensive arguments on either side, but Marcus should go back to starting. And I think between LeBron, Luke, and Marcus, the Lakers do have enough collective ball handling and playmaking to be at least competent, if not good, offensively against much better potential defenses here in Houston and Minnesota. Vando, I thought like his first half was kind of okay, but I thought he played better in the second half. 6 points, 7 rebounds. Good to see he's out of the doghouse, and got out of the doghouse in San Francisco, and just I think he's earned that 8th spot in the rotation. Bronny had some nice moments in this game. I think the one thing with him continues to just be like, to me, he's more of a secondary guy than a primary guy. When the Lakers have tried to hand the keys to the offense, and we saw that a bit last night, he'll have some turnovers. And I don't know if it's the lack of size or him still just kind of figuring out. I mean, being an NBA point guard is a tough job. And I think there's a certain amount of reps and minutes you just need to accumulate under your belt. But I have liked him more as either a spot up guy or more of like that connecting piece offensively rather than as an on ball initiator. Then Nick Smith Jr., who we will touch on during the 15th man conversation, after scorching the Nets in San Francisco, goes just 1 for 5, 0 for 3 on threes, and 4 points, 2 rebounds. Shows the variance that you can have night to night. But we'll touch on him and his potential role in all this. And then Maxi Kleba came in, and I think like he still does all these little things that don't show up in the box score necessarily, but I don't think he's had quite the same impact these last few weeks as he had at a couple points earlier in the season. And at this point, I don't love the idea of him being a rotation player, which again, we will touch on during the takeaway portion. In terms of stat of the night, 17 steals for the Lakers, which tied their season high, which they set against Washington. I would also point out again, the LeBron minutes being or the non-LeBron minutes being a slight positive is, I guess, like good, but ideally that would even be like more of a positive against this type of team and just with how the fourth quarter went. And that's going to be something I'm monitoring going into round one, is just how they can configure the right lineups when LeBron is off. In terms of 3 takeaways, takeaway number 1 is going to be the playoff scenarios on Sunday. So the Lakers, again, to recap, are either going to be the number 3 seed or the number 4 seed. They have a locked up home court advantage. They will either be hosting Minnesota in the 3-6 matchup, chance for some revenge, or Houston in the 4-5 matchup, a chance to run into the buzzsaw that is Oklahoma City in round 2. So I'm of a couple minds here, because I think in terms of what would give the Lakers the best chance to advance, to at least extend the first round series and to advance, I've gone back and forth between Houston and Minnesota. I think full strength, I don't think it's a conversation. It's Houston. You'd rather play Houston than Minnesota. But Minnesota has been dealing with some injury stuff here with Jaden McDaniels, Anthony Edwards. Jaden McDaniels recently returned, but was week to week. Anthony Edwards returned again tonight, but he's been in and out of the lineup, and he's dealing with the same injury, runner's knee, that Steph Curry, he was supposed to miss 7 to 10 days. He ended up missing 2 months. So I think while Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards are technically back and still both on minutes restrictions, there is this element of, can they sustain for a full 7-game series? And if you told me Minnesota doesn't have one of Ant or McDaniels, or potentially doesn't have both of them, I think the Lakers have a better chance of winning that series than they do against Houston, even for how low I am on Houston, which is pretty low. I think for those of you who remember, I said going into that potential matchup a week ago when the Lakers were healthy, I said I thought the Lakers would beat Houston in 5. So I like that matchup more for the Lakers. It's just Houston's injury situation. Minnesota's injury situation kind of puts this in limbo a little bit. Though I will note, with Houston needing to win tonight to keep their shot at being the 3 or 4 seeds still alive and playing at home, they lost to a Minnesota team with McDaniels and Edwards on minutes restrictions and no Randall, Gobert, and Reed. I believe no Reed, if I'm not mistaken. So that to me kind of that says a lot there of like a must-win situation for Houston to at least position themselves to have home court in the 4-5 against the Lakers or have a shot at it. And the fact that they lost that, it was a close game, but still the fact that they lost that game, some alarm bells of like, I still think Houston is a team you want to play. The issue with playing Houston and staying in the 4-5 is you set up against OKC in round 2, and I could drink all the purple Kool-Aid in the world. I just don't think the Lakers have any shot against Oklahoma City. And I think the most probable thing right now would be a sweep against Oklahoma City. So that's where I'm like, the highest chance of advancing in round 1, in my opinion, is Houston. The highest chance of advancing to the conference finals and at least having a puncher's chance of maybe making the finals, to me, is the San Antonio side. So that's where the Lakers are. But then you got to go through Minnesota, who I think is, if they can get to full strength or close to it in the next week, I do think they present a much greater challenge. And I think it's going to be tougher for LA to extend the series without Luka and Austin. So Lakers, now the thing with all this is Lakers don't control their destiny here. Like they do to a degree if they take care of business against Utah, which I think they will. But there's a subplot of, do they rest their guys? Like, do they just say LeBron, Marcus, like kind of do the Denver of, if we win, we win. But Marcus, LeBron, you guys are banged up. JJ implied Marcus is going to play, so I'd be surprised by that. But like maybe LeBron, hey, we do not want to risk anything with you. Take the night off. We need you game 1. And that I think the Lakers can lose if LeBron doesn't play, but I still would pick them. But then there's also the question of just like, do the Lakers care about being 3 or 4, right? You don't want to upset the basketball gods. And I'm not advocating for them tanking or giving up on the game. It's just an interesting question of I do think there's a difference between a healthy Minnesota and a healthy Houston, because before the Lakers got injured, Houston was the team everybody wanted to play in round 1. And now they're still the number 2 team everybody wants to play. But the Lakers don't control their own destiny, because their destiny right now is controlled by Denver, who is a game ahead of them. Lakers have the tiebreaker, but Denver's playing San Antonio in San Antonio. Now, a couple of interesting things with this is Nikola Jokic is 1 game away from the 65 game rule. So it doesn't seem like he's going to win MVP. Seems like he's probably going to finish second, but he's like not going to win. Shea's going to win. But he has to play at least 20 minutes in that game to qualify for MVP and first team All-NBA. And first team All-NBA is a big honor that matter. What we're talking career resumes and Hall of Fame like Jokic is going to be a Hall of Famer, but just when you're comparing him to the best big man of all time, how many first team All-NBAs you have is going to matter. And he has a shot here to potentially finish top 2 in MVP for a 6th straight season, which very few players have done. Off the top of my head, I think it's LeBron, it's Jordan, and maybe Bird or Magic, and Kareem. Like, it's a very short list of guys who finished top 2 in MVP 6 straight years. So I think like there's some history on the line. But David Adelman suggested after the game that they're going to talk to Jokic about what he wants to do, what's best for the group. Obviously, if he plays, he would have to play at least 20 minutes. It's not a situation where they could play him a quarter and then it's done. So that's a whole thing. And then Denver also has the factor of like, do they want to play Minnesota, who has beat them in the 2024 playoffs, second round, swept them last year in the regular season, has kind of had their number. This year it's been different. Denver's up 3-1 against them in the regular season, but it's a real question for Denver. Then you have the San Antonio side where Wemby hit the 65 game rule as of tonight because he's played 64, but they count the NBA Cup championship for games played. So although the stats don't count, Wemby has technically played 65 games by the NBA's rule book. So Wemby's eligible to rest. And with how San Antonio has treated Wemby all season, I would be fairly confident they're going to rest him for that final game. So maybe San Antonio says, no Wemby tonight, but we're playing everybody else. We're going for it. And we'll let the chips fall where they may without Wemby. But that's an interesting game because it could be a preview of the 2-3 in the second round. But also for San Antonio, if they beat Denver, they knock Denver out of their side of the bracket and put them on the OKC side. And you can make a case that San Antonio's two biggest threats right now are OKC and Denver. And if you have an opportunity to push them on the same side of the bracket, that's a pretty attractive thing for San Antonio here. And if you could somehow set it up where your side of the bracket is whoever you play in round one, and then a Lakers team that doesn't have two of their three best players, plus Minnesota, who's also dealing with injuries, that puts you in a position where you should win round one. You'll be a heavy favorite in round two, potentially, and then you're in the conference finals. So really interesting last 48 hours here, so 36 hours, because Lakers have some unknowns with just, are they going to play their guys? Are they going to rest their guys? Do they care what seed they get? Denver's in complete control here. Like, they can't control whether they beat the Spurs necessarily, but they can't control whether they go for it or not. And do they rest their starters again? Do they rest Jokic? And to me, it feels like they're going to go for it, or at least play him. Maybe he's the only one and the starters rest, but they had him come back with enough time to be award eligible. And yes, he's not going to win MVP, but I still think finishing top 2 6 years in a row, plus being first team All NBA, would mean something. So I'd be pretty surprised if they just punt it, at least from the Jokic point. But maybe he plays 20 of the 24 minutes in the first half, and then they rest him in the second half and say, screw it. We'll see where it goes. But San Antonio, if they play Wemby and make it a real game, that would be interesting, because that would be Denver's fighting to stay away from OKC and play San Antonio round two. San Antonio's fighting to keep Denver away from them, play Lakers or Wolves. It's going to be interesting to see how the Sunday plays out. Then takeaway number 2 is the 15th man. So the Lakers waived Kobe Buffkin today. I've not shared my thoughts publicly on this. I was a little surprised, only through the lens of I've talked about this before, but the Lakers, if you look at their moves the last few years, they have been slow to move off of mistakes, and they have been reluctant to admit mistakes, and especially reluctant to use assets to get off of if it's a bad contract or someone needs to be waived. The Lakers are typically on the slower side of waiting out the situation until the 11th hour, then finding a solution. That's kind of what they did here, but I just wasn't sure of how much it's really moving the needle, like a Kobe Buffkin versus a Nick Smith Jr. versus Drew Timme. But I do commend them for admitting they missed on the signing, they whiffed on it, and moving on. And I think that was the right thing, because and these situations are always interesting, because Kobe Buffkin was crushing it in the G League. He had a couple games there where he showed some flashes of just his NBA potential. And then, but that was on the 10-day. And then the Lakers convert him to the full roster. And then he just has been buried on the bench. And even recently, I was kind of thinking about this. It's been telling recently, where if you were just judging up to that point of the season, a couple weeks ago, I think you can make a case Kobe Buffkin had more of a legitimate reason to be in the rotation than Bronny. and had outplayed him at the G League level, but they gave Bronny the shot to be the rotation guy. And Bronny has, I think been playing solid for them and has continued to be in the rotation and might even be the ninth man in the playoffs. But like that was kind of telling of why didn't Kobe Buffkin get that shot when you tested this guy out with a 10-day, you converted him to the 15th roster spot. He's been playing awesome in the G League. And like you have no interest in testing him out as a rotation guy. So that was like the first sign. And then last night, which again, I did not watch the game live, upon rewatching and seeing Nick Smith Jr. come into the game and no Kobe Buffkin until garbage time, that was where I was like, oh, it's kind of like, again, another guard. They could have gone to Kobe Buffkin. They went to Nick Smith Jr. and Bronny was obviously ahead of him too. Like just did not, for whatever reason, click with the coaching staff and within the rotation. So I think it's a good thing that the Lakers waved the white flag on the situation and decided to move on while they still have an opportunity here to sign somebody. Now, there's been a lot of names thrown out and a lot of wish casting for different scenarios. I think this is likely going to come down to Nick Smith Jr. versus Drew Timme. Perhaps the Lakers surprise us and there's a free agent that they've earmarked that we aren't aware of, or maybe it's one of the many names that's been floated out there. I think at this stage of the season, it's tough to add somebody 2 days before the regular season ends or a week before the playoffs and just hope that they can play rotation minutes. Like I don't really think that's how this typically works. So I think it's between Nick Smith Jr. and Drew Timme. Now between the two, I think Drew Timme is the better player. I think Nick Smith has probably had a couple of higher highs than Drew Timme, but I think Drew Timme's been steadier. And in terms of like fitting into an actual lineup, like Nick Smith Jr.'s version of this has been like the Portland game where he just went supernova. Lakers were shorthanded, and you could argue they're shorthanded right now, but I still think if Nick Smith Jr. is in the rotation, there's a general hierarchy of LeBron, then right now it honestly might be Luke second, but like maybe LeBron, Luke, Marcus, Rui's in the mix, DA's in the mix. I just don't see Nick Smith Jr. being higher than like sixth in the pecking order. And if you're not playing into Nick Smith Jr.'s strengths, which I'm not advocating that they should, I'm just saying like if you're going to have him on the roster and not really empower him, I don't know how much it makes sense. Now, he did shoot well against Golden State last night, and it was largely in a catch and shoot role. So maybe there's something there with that. But I think my big thing with him is I just think he's a minus defender who gets picked on and targeted. And with the Lakers already dealing with some of that in their primary rotation, especially if Luke's playing 40 minutes a night and is shooting the ball the way he is and passing the way he is, like the flip side is going to be teams are going to relentlessly target Luke Kennard. And the goal is going to be to get him in foul trouble, get him off of the floor, get him to a point where JJ has to make a decision like, is the offense worth the defense? And so if you're going to be testing out Luke that much and also testing out Rui and DA and some of these guys, I just don't know if you could add in a small guard who's a minus defender into your rotation. Now with Drew Timme, he's obviously a minus defender at the big man spot. But I think within the context of how the Lakers have used him and have been successful with him, it's been a lot of two big lineups and a lot of zone. And I think within that, Drew Timme could actually function well. And if you're not relying on him to be a post stopper or relying on him to be a rim protector, and you're using him on the baseline of a zone, I think that's a much better use of his talents. And then you factor in when he's been out there lately, Lakers have been having him bring the ball up, initiate the offense, go into DHOs. I think, like, to me, Timmy's clearly the better player. I don't even really think it's a conversation, but Nick Smith fits more of the role of like ball handler, scorer, guy who can get hot. I have a harder time seeing him actually playing playoff minutes compared to Timme. Now, to be clear, I don't think any of these guys should be in the top 9. I've gone back and forth with Timme. I think I advocated for it after, I forget if it was the Dallas game or the OKC game. Like to me, he's fringy. You could make the case maybe for him as the 9th guy. Like I think the top 8 is clear. Maybe you go with him at the 9th spot, but I think in an ideal sense, neither one of these guys is a playoff player. I don't think either one of them is good enough defensively to play in a playoff series. But between the two, I would personally lean Timmy. Now, again, I know people are going to default to the position and like Lakers need more backcourt help. I totally get that argument. I just don't think, I think at this stage, like I would lean on the talent and the track record. And to me, Nick Smith has had a 2 or 3 like really impactful games and high highs as a scorer, but he needs to have the ball in his hands a certain amount and be shooting at a certain level to warrant that. And I just don't know if you can rely on that in a playoff series or like hope for that in a playoff series where Drew Timme, even if he's not scoring, I think we've seen like when the Lakers feed him in the post, he's actually been a pretty capable post scorer. Even when he's not scoring, he's moving the ball, he's boxing out, he is in the right spots. And I trust him more than I trust Nick Smith. But between the two, I'd lean Timme, but I also understand the counterpoint if you say Nick Smith Jr. just because of the position. And then takeaway number 3, just quick injury update on Jaxson Hayes. JJ said he is day-to-day and no concern about his long-term availability. JJ hopes he's back Sunday. The way it was weird because the way he was talking about it, it sounded like he wasn't going to be back Sunday. And then he's like, I hope he's back Sunday. So I don't know where we're at with Jaxson right now, but it sounds like if he's not back Sunday, he'll be back by game 1, which is really important. And then quick Lakers Golden State thoughts. I've already touched on it. Like spring, just yeah. I mean, LeBron played incredible basketball. I thought Da, Rui, and Vando all responded well to JJ challenging them in that OKC game. JJ talked about it before and after the game, but he talked to those guys, specifically Rui. He said Rui came up to his hotel room and they had a nice conversation there at the hotel. Also talked to Vando, and he said the coaching staff is like each coach has a few players that are assigned to them. Those that like the guys they'll watch film with or go through practice stuff with or pregame stuff with, and those guys are constantly reporting back to him. And it was important for him to keep that line of communication going with between those coaches and the players, but then using that to then lead into bigger conversations with those guys. So I thought those guys all bounced back. Nick Smith Jr. had a nice game. I thought Bronny had some nice moments, especially in the fourth quarter. And yeah, I mean, as I said earlier, like I don't take away too much because I think that Golden State team was at like a Brooklyn, Washington level with their Sacramento level with their available talent. But the Lakers played really great basketball on both sides of the ball. And, maybe took them a little bit longer than it should have to break the game open, but they eventually broke the game open. And through that lens, it was nice to see them start to piece together their identity. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. First one from Peter. Thank you for the super chat. Adelman didn't commit to playing Jokic on Sunday. Have a feeling that Denver wants to avoid Minnesota, which looked great tonight. Have a feeling that Denver punts. Yeah, it's tough because again, I think you had sent this in before I got more into the Denver stuff because this was like right when I went live. So it's just tough because like, again, Jokic is going to, I think, at least on the conversations I've had with media people, it sounds like he's trending more towards second now and is past Wemby in the MVP hierarchy. So to have 6 straight seasons of top 2 finishes again, that's very rare air, and it's a sustained stretch of excellence that not many people can boast. And then you also have the first team All-NBA thing. So if I were Jokic and Adelman and I do want to punt, I think I would just say, let's play him 20 of the 24 minutes in the first half and then punt the second half. But I don't know that I would outright punt the game. Now, if he's out there, I mean, the tricky thing is like, what if you get out to like a 15, like maybe San Antonio doesn't want to risk it. They're just like, we don't want to play our main guys. San Antonio rests their guys. Denver's up 15-20 at halftime. And then you're like, now you got to find a way to punt or blow a 15, 20 point lead. That's one way this could go. But maybe San Antonio just goes for it themselves and they play Wemby or they play everybody else but Wemby. And like, even without Wemby, they've been a pretty good team. And I think they have technically like a plus minus, but they've won some games without Wemby. And Luke Cornett's one of the best, might be the best defensive backup big man in the league. And yeah, I mean, like they just played Denver and Denver they just played Denver with Wemby, but a bit ago, I think Wemby missed that game or not, but I don't quite remember. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what Denver does. I mean, on the one hand, like Lakers getting the 3 seed from a results perspective, I think that's awesome. From a first round viability perspective, I am concerned because Luka and Austin in particular were so fundamental in the Lakers' success. Like Austin cooked them in all 3 games. Luka cooked them in 2 of the 3 games because Luka didn't play in one of them. LeBron hasn't even faced Minnesota yet. I would just be a lot less confident in LA's ability to extend that series, but we're assuming here Minnesota is at like relatively full strength. If they're without McDaniels or Edwards, it's a different conversation. J Earth, I always want to call you J Earth, even though it's J Mjorth. I hope I didn't butcher that too bad. But I'll, in my head, you are J Earth. Think of a super chat. Bronze got at least one vintage 2018 style playoff game in him where he's going to drop 40 plus. He still got it. And I'm flying to LA to see the GOAT do it. Yes. I mean, I'm not sure what's going to happen with the Lakers, right? And I even think going into game 1, I mean, if we look at the slate of games they played, it's going to be like they played a lottery team in Dallas. They played 2 play-in teams, but 2 play-in teams that were not close to full strength in Golden State and Phoenix. They played a lottery team in Utah, and then they played Oklahoma City, but they didn't have LeBron in that game, and got waxed. So we have not seen the Lakers play like a good team that's not OKC, basically, and which every good team is below OKC right now. So I would the first game 1 will be like the first test of just you're not playing like a bad team or the best team in the league. So it'll be interesting to see how they adjust to that in game 1 next weekend, but which is again crazy. We're already talking about next weekend being game 1, but yeah, I think LeBron, I think he's going to have a really good series. I agree that he'll have one game of 35 plus, 40 plus, and I think he will win at least a game for the Lakers. I would say Minnesota, it's going to be a pretty tall task in my opinion, just because they have such a giant front court. But I think there's going to be a lot. I think in both series, it's going to be a lot of packing the paint and like how much can the Lakers make. Like Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart, Vando are going to get a million wide open threes. It's going to be respect. Like LeBron's going to have a bunch of attention on him. Rui and Luke are the 2 guys you can't leave. Marcus, Jake, Vando, shoot your heart out. Shoot as much as you want. And that's going to be the defensive game plan. So it's going to be tough against Minnesota, I will say. But I do think LeBron can get a game at least against one of those 2 teams. But far more confident against Houston. Jay, again, thank you for the super chat. My worry is that this makes Braun not want to go back to the 3rd option role next year, and he goes somewhere where he can play this on-ball role again. That's a fair concern, but I would note that like LeBron, at least publicly, was embracing this. And, I know he had the line in Dallas about like, clearly indicating he can do more, which he clearly can. But I think there's also an element of, balance here, right? Because like Luka's going to be the number 1. It's his team. He is the franchise player now. Like the keys have been handed over to him. And then Austin is a guy who's in a contract year, who the Lakers want to be the number 2 or number 3 next to Luka. And there's, I think, been some give and take there. And I think I think the tricky thing, and we've talked about this with LeBron before, but because LeBron can do so much, LeBron can take a backseat offensively and still be effective in other ways. Whereas if you marginalize Austin, for example, because I think those are the 2 guys that have been, the competition for the 2 versus the 3, whatever. It's just like Austin can't do as much as LeBron. That's just not like, Austin started as a role player and got into the rotation by doing the little things, but as he has assumed a higher usage and been more of an offensive player, I think some of those things, like, he's still among the league leaders in charges and the playmaking, the shooting, like those things are stabilizers, like from an off ball perspective, or just like not only from like a scoring perspective. But I think the gift of the curse with LeBron is the queen on the chessboard, despite being the king. And because he could do a little bit of everything, it's when you're trying to figure out the optimal way to optimize everybody, it's a little bit easier to be like, well, LeBron, like, we need you now to pass more. We need you now to cut more. We need you now to screen more. We need you now to rebound more. We need you now to defend more. Like, he can do those things in a way that Austin and even Luka just can't quite. Like, I think LeBron's the most versatile player of all time. So even at 41, he could do some things that, like, I mean, he's still a better athlete than both of those guys. And you see the way he's still jumping and different, like, he's just a freak. And so it's a little bit easier to be like, LeBron, you take the back seat and do these other things, because the alternative version is, okay, LeBron, you're the number 2, but like now Austin, I mean, we saw kind of when LeBron was more the number 2 and Austin was the number 3, it just Austin wasn't as effective and it just wasn't quite working as well between the big 3. It took LeBron having to tweak his game or his role more. And I think it's a testament to his greatness that he's able to do that. But I don't know. I mean, that could be a possibility here. I don't want to. I think we got to see how the rest of the playoffs go and just where things are at. But I think it's possible that it plays out that way. I would just also say, I think LeBron has enjoyed the last couple of months with this group and just how they've been playing. And I'm sure he's enjoyed the last few games as well with in terms of like his role in usage. But I think the pros still outweigh the cons. And I think as of right now that the most likely scenario continues to be him remaining a Laker. Mint Millions, thank you for the super chat. Why do NBA players always seem to end up with their high school sweethearts or OnlyFans models? Wow. We are really getting into it here. Okay. Well, I think the high school sweetheart one is straightforward. I think it's when, especially like just basic psychology here, every NBA player for the most part was like the best player in their state, or like it's kind of funny because there are the exceptions, right? There are certainly exceptions, but even the guys who were like second round picks or undrafted guys, or like you go look up their resume and it's like, oh, they won like 2 state titles, or they won like 2 Mr. Indianas, or, so like most NBA players have been on a trajectory since they were in elementary school, middle school, or at the latest high school, and like had a sense of, I'm at least playing D1 at like the highest level and potentially making the NBA. So you start to like, and then you think about the AAU circuit and just all the people wanting something from you, and a lot of NBA players, their circle is pretty small. It's like they have maybe a couple of high school friends or college friends or like a manager or something, their agent and a couple people, and they don't really trust or hang out with many people outside of that orbit. There are exceptions, but for the most part, like they have pretty tight circles. So through that similar lens, you're going to, if someone's with you before the fame and you're 15, 16, 17, and you start dating somebody and they are loyal and a day one, you're going to want to stay with that person because the future people, it's going to be, oh, well, he was the number 10 pick, or, oh, he signed the $150 million contract, or, oh, he's starting on the Lakers or something, right? Then then there's kind of like a line of demarcation of the people that were in your life before a certain point and the people that are in your life after that point, right? And so I think there's a natural like trust and loyalty that comes with being with one of your high school sweethearts. Now, for the second part of this question, I think OnlyFans models and strippers part of this is more like there's at least no illusion of why they're, well, I don't want to cast, I don't want to stereotype, right? But I think there's a more like transactional element to it of at least there's no like, what does this person want from me? And it depends on the situation, right? Like, so I don't want to go too much into it, but I think there's a little bit more of a transactional element where it's at least like no illusions of what's going on. And it's more like, but yeah, I don't know. I'm going too far down this road. I'm going to stop myself. Peter, thank you for the super chat. What do you think of the new courtside seats? The Dodgerification of the Lakers is going to leave everyday fans behind. Two friends have not renewed season tickets, and crypto will soon turn into Chase Center. It's tough. I get it. Like, I think ideally you include all fans or have some sort of seating or section or dynamic where you can have the everyday fans and the prices aren't getting astronomical, which they have progressively been, increasing. But it's just, at the end of the day, like, it's a business, and I like, we just have decades upon decades of NBA owners will always operate under how can I make the most money? And it's like, I think that's one of the biggest challenges right now with the potential expansion is you're divvying up the pie into 32 slices instead of 30. And the way to offset that would be a certain buy-in price at a certain number that you could be dispersed amongst the owners and they'll be cooler with the expansion. But we have a lot of history that like NBA owners, not only is like most things about making money, but it's also if there's any potential like option on the table to like lose money, like that's where the whole thing with the schedule and 82 games versus 60 games or 65 games or 70 games, however many it could potentially be slashed to at some point in the future. That's going to be really difficult because if we're splitting that between home games and road games, you're potentially cutting 7 to 13, 14 home games, which is, depending on the team, like tens of millions of dollars and maybe even over 50 million. Like, again, depending on how many games, depending on the team, could be over $50 million. And that's a lot of money to give up. So I say all this to say, like, I think there's like, ideally that there's some way to some flexible ticketing prices where whether it's a certain section or maybe it's the 300 section and you're just like, we're going to put a cap on the 300 section, but everything under, we're going to Dodgerify it or Warriorify it if we're comparing it to the Chase Center. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. I don't really have a great answer for it because we just have history that suggests owners will always take the money and not only always take the money, but again, not even open to things that potentially decrease the bottom line in any capacity. So even if it was like, hey, we're starting to price out some fans, I think they're still going to be like, well, we want to be like the thing. And then there's also the exclusive nature of I think things in general and like society have kind of trended toward exclusivity. And I could see them kind of going in that direction of just being like Laker games are for a certain person or a certain status or whatever. And then, yeah, it's unfortunate for most people. But yeah, I mean, I will say to this point, I've seen it at Chase Center. I've been to peak Roracle. I was there at the beginning of the Steph, Clay, Draymond run. And that to this day is the loudest arena I've ever been in. Chase Center's not that. And the Lakers got to be careful with that. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. Not understanding a dude's lack of playing time in this back-to-back, shaking my head. Yeah, it felt like to me a little bit of an audition for Nick Smith these last couple of games. And I think he played well the first game. I don't think he played particularly well tonight, but that would be my read on it. You also got Marcus back tonight. And then I think they were leaning a little bit more on Vando last night to kind of sort of patch things over. So, but yeah, I mean, I thought Adu played well in that OKC game, and I only played 2 minutes tonight. I thought it was a little wild in his Golden State shift last night, but that's just part of the Adu experience. And yeah, I mean, I would like to see him play more, but that just doesn't seem to be on the table. Mint Millions, think of it, super chat. LeBron is way too good to retire. He's going to come back for a final year with Luka and hopefully good Rob offseason. He shouldn't leave. Grass isn't always greener. Agreed on all fronts. I don't think anybody thought LeBron should retire. Like, I mean, it's clearly up to him, right? Whatever he wants to do is the right answer, and I think we should all support that. But he was already playing at a level where it was clear he should not retire. He's gone to an even different level, and or reminded us that he can get to that level is maybe a better way of putting it. And yeah, I think things are trending toward him staying, but I think the big thing remains just what does that contract look like? Jay, thank you for the super chat. I think NBA does LA a solid and really spaces out our games in hopes of Luka's return. 19th, 22nd, 25th, 28th, or something. One thing with this is that I think the Lakers are going to play on the 18th. If you look at the last couple of years, I think it's at least the last 2 years, if not the last 3, the Lakers have played on that opening Saturday. So could be different this year to try and space it out, to your point. But I think the Lakers, like the Saturday game, the Saturday slate is the opening day of the playoffs. The Lakers are always that marquee afternoon matchup, or evening matchup. So I think the Lakers will be playing on the 18th, but we'll see. We'll know Sunday evening when they announce the first round schedule outside of the play-in games. And I agree. I mean, typically in the first round, it is spread out relatively. And if you look at even the last couple of years, because I was looking at it, just going through, trying to figure out what the schedule is potentially going to be, it is typically, I don't know if it'll be to this like 3 days in between every game. I think there will be some game in the first 4 that has like a 1 day break maybe. And it's sometimes game 3 and 4 are the game, because you do have breaks for travel. So they'll split that up. And I could see something like 18th, 21st, then 24th, but then like 26th. I think it'd be something like that. But I agree though, in general, if we'll compare the Lakers first round matchup to the other ones in the West and see if they got a little bit of a break with the schedule. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. Summer trade DA Vando 2 firsts for Herb and Bay. Sign AR 35, LeBron 20, Kessler 35, Smart 11, Luke 7, Thibault 5, Rob Williams 7, Jackson Hayes 5, roster Luka, AR, Herb, LBJ, Kessler, Smart, Luke, Bay, Jack Hayes, Jake Hayes, Bronny, Thibault, Adu, Rob Williams. Sorry. Let's backtrack for a second. Okay, so DA and Vando 2 firsts for Herb and Bay. We've talked about a similar structure recently in terms of a first for Herb and then a first to get off Vando. In this case, you're also adding DA into it. Might as well try to sneak Dalton in there, but I like where your head's at. It is an aggressive price for Herb Jones, but again, if you look at it in a vacuum and you're saying 2 firsts for Herb, I agree that that's an overpay. If you look at it through the lens of circumstance and context, it's a first for Herb Jones, which I think is a fair price for Herb Jones, and also just a fair price based on the Lakers' current limitations of acquiring that type of defender and player who's also on Luka and Austin's timeline, but then also a first to get off of Vando's contract, which is going to be the going price. And then I like Saddiq Bey, if you could add him. In terms of, so Austin and Jaxson, we put to the side because they'll use the bird rights on those guys. Their numbers will be at their cap hold rather than the numbers here. So LeBron, Kessler. So already here, LeBron, Kessler, Smart, I think you're blowing past the cap space. I guess if you can dump, so DA and Vando compared to, I actually think the Lakers, let me see what Saddiq Bey's contract is, because Herb is at around, let me just double check. So Saddiq Bey is making 6.4 next year. So you're actually basically netting out even, close to even with DA and Vando compared to Herb and Bey. So you actually don't, at first I was like, oh, you save a bunch of money, or at least enough money to maybe nudge that cap space to like 60 million, but it's actually close to even. Lakers might be saving a little bit of money, but it's not much. So yeah, LeBron, Kessler, and Smart, you're already blowing past the cap space. You could earmark the room exception for Luke, but then Thibault and Rob Williams would both have to be minimum players. So you're close. I think either LeBron or Kessler would have to take a little bit less. And then if you're LeBron, are you open to taking less? If you're Kessler, I mean, that might incentivize Utah to match. So I think this is, and then Robert Williams and Thibault might both be minimum guys, or maybe biannual exception guys. But I think that's more along the lines of being realistic. I would just say that I think between Kessler and LeBron is just 55 million, which might be actually more cap space than the Lakers have. Now, one interesting note, which I actually didn't touch on that I'm glad I just thought of, with the Kobe Buffkin situation, it will be interesting to see what they do with the contract. I assume it would be a similar contract to one that Kobe Buffkin had, in terms of Kobe Buffkin had a team option, so the Lakers could afford to waive him and not have to pay him next year. I would assume that if they sign Nick Smith Jr. or Drew Timme, it will be a similar structure of they're signed through this season, then they have a team option for next year. Let me just make sure I haven't missed anything, all right, just making sure nothing crazy has happened since because especially with the signing, I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything potentially happening overnight. All right, Peter, thank you for super chat. Let's not get carried away. 2 nice wins, but def intensity will be much higher round 1. Udoka, Finch, sophisticated defensive coaches, both teams top 6 defense. Yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers are going to be massive underdogs, and I think both of these series would be far more like if we're ranking outcomes, I think 4 or 5 games is still far more likely than 6 or 7 games, right? That there's still just a talent and skill difference between the Lakers and Rockets and Lakers and Wolves. Rockets I'm a little bit lower on, just because I think for many reasons, like the vibes with the group, I think the Lakers had a bit of a psychological edge against them in those couple games in Houston. And I know they've been playing better lately, so maybe they've righted the ship, even though they lost tonight. I basically just don't trust their if you can get Houston in a close game with 5 minutes left, as we saw tonight, and although they just beat Minnesota a couple weeks ago, remember, in Minnesota. So, but there was no Ant in that game. Might've been no McDaniels as well. If you can get them into a close game with 5 minutes left, I think you have a pretty good chance of winning. And that to me actually says more about Houston than the Lakers. But if it's like LeBron problem solve against Houston with 5 minutes left and just win a 5-minute shift, I have confidence in LeBron to do that. Now, to do that to win a series, no, I don't. I still am not there in terms of LA realistically having a chance to beat Houston or Minnesota in a round 1 as currently constructed. But can it be a 2-1 Houston, or even 2-2? 2-2 is a little bit tougher because especially with the road games being games 3 and 4, I think that's a little bit tougher. But can you give Luka a chance to can you extend the series to give Luka a chance? Yes. Minnesota, I'm concerned with, because they had Luka and Austin last year and they lost in 5, and they're deeper now, but I would actually rather just take a worse bench right now and have Luka and Austin available. If you gave me those 2 options of LeBron plus more depth, or LeBron, Luka, and Austin and less depth, I would still take. So for example, I think this year's team is better than last year's team, but I think last year's team, playoff roster wise, would beat this year's team in a 7-game series. And I don't think that's should be a controversial take. So the fact that now Minnesota hasn't been the same team necessarily that they were last year, but Minnesota, I think I would have a tough time seeing that going to 6, right? Luka would have to come back by game 3 or game 4 for LA to have a chance to to extend it. So I'm not like, I still think the most likely scenario is Lakers losing in 4 or 5, but I've become more optimistic about potentially 5. And if you can stretch it to 5, I think you could stretch it to potentially Luka coming back. So if Luka comes back, then all bets are off depending on how he looks. Reeves Strongest Soldier, thank you for becoming a YouTube member. I appreciate it. I hope that was not around the only fans rant. What does it matter, bruh? Thank you for the super chat. Kobe was completely, bungled by Rob and JJ. That's a word I should know, but apparently I don't. He's literally better than BJ, NSJ, DT. Oh, for some reason I thought you were talking about Kobe. And I was like, the name still throws me off. And I was like, I understand. I was like, okay, that's an interesting first statement. And then the second part, I was like, okay. Yeah, he's better than Bronny and Nick Smith and Dalton or Drew Timme. I don't agree with how the situation went down. I said at the time, I would have probably preferred Haywood Highsmith just for the Lakers needing another wing and ideally a wing who could play both sides of the ball. Now, Haywood Highsmith has amounted to nothing in Phoenix and has not been healthy. And so either way, that would have been a miss, right? When you're signing a 15th guy, I think we oftentimes like cast the most optimistic projection onto it of, well, this guy can do this. And like we start thinking about like the upside with the guy, but there's more often than not a downside. And like typically when you sign a buyout guy or someone that's a back end of the roster guy, with some exception, but for the most part, those guys are just not really difference makers. They don't factor into your rotation. If they do factor into your rotation, you're kind of in a bad spot, which is where the Lakers are right now, just in terms of their availability. But I would agree with this. I still think he's better than Nick Smith Jr., but like you also can't deny that like Nick Smith, his highs have been higher than Kobe's, and he has just shot the ball and scored the ball better than Kobe. Now I think Kobe's a better defender. In terms of Drew Timme and Bronny, in theory, especially seeing what he did at the G League level, Kobe's upside, I think right now is higher than both those guys, but that's just not the way it played out from a rotation perspective or a role perspective. And I don't know what happened behind the scenes to potentially lead to that, but yeah, it just has not gone well for him and ultimately got waived. What does it matter, bro? Also, you telling me that you signed KB to the last spot when your bench was putrid before Luka AR got hurt just to not have an option there after the fact, after waiving him. A+ asset management again. Yeah, I mean, we could have a larger conversation. Shout out to Jeannie from Laker Film Room Pod. She's the editor over there. I think she put something from, I think it might have been from Offside, but I'm not sure, like some meme of the Lakers looking for guards and them. It was like Kendrick Nunn, Gabe Vincent, Kobe Buffkin, and several other guys. But yeah, I mean, they've Dalton, like they just have not really identified. I think their strength recently has been. It's like DA and Marcus are a couple examples of this. Even DFS to a degree. I wouldn't put Jake in this categorization, but they've been able to get some guys who teams have given up on, or guys who I would say more in like Marcus and DFS's instances or cases, like they kind of looked washed and were a little bit injury prone. And so the Lakers like got DFS at it. Like for forever, Brooklyn had been asking for a first for DFS. Lakers got him for less than a first. And then Marcus had 2 injury riddled years, what was not looking like himself, and was available on the buyout market. DA was more, a couple teams gave up on him and like he was in a shaky spot with his NBA future. And then Jake is a different thing altogether, where he just had been like more of a back end rotation roster guy and had some flashes like in the rotation, particularly in Sacramento, but just was more of like a incognito free agent target. But I think like they've done a good job maybe identifying guys with pedigree who teams are looking past. But even then, that's also kind of extended into they're trying to, like, they keep trying to be this like, you know, the second team for a Kobe Buffkin and Nick Smith or some of these guys, and it just isn't working. And I think at some point they need to start prioritizing more so skill set and fit, and like forget the name, forget the pedigree, forget what this player was supposed to be 3 years ago, and actually look at what they can do. And that's when you will find your Spencer Jones and that type of player. And you look at just some of the guys Denver's been able to find, some of the guys Phoenix has found, some of the guys that OKC has found, some of the guys that Boston has found. That's the level that the Lakers need to get to in terms of identifying under the radar guys. And with the exception of maybe Jake LaRavia, if you want to put him in that class, they just have not been able to do that lately. Oi the boy, thank you for the super chat. Yo, Buha, you think Reeves plays in the first round? I do not. I don't. His injury timetable is supposed to be longer. Like, if you think about it, just take a step back. For Luka, they did not give an actual timetable. They just said Luka's out through the rest of the regular season. For Austin, they said Austin is out 4 to 6 weeks. So already just going off of that, I mean, on the one hand, you could be like, oh, well, with Luka, they technically left it open-ended, so like he could return sooner, but he could also just not return, and they never put a timetable on that. But I think that was more intentional with Luka trying to return in the first round. With Austin, 4 weeks, and that's in the very best case scenario, we're now, I think a little bit past the 1 week mark, but I mean, 3 weeks from now is going to be into early May. And, maybe that's a game 7 in the first round, depending on how long the first round goes. But yeah, I mean, maybe you're throwing Austin into a game 7, but I think realistically for Austin, it's going to be round 2. I think the elephant in the room here that we have to address is it's also a contract year for him. So I think the worst case scenario for Austin would be like return, not play well, which potentially, which further perpetuates the notion that you can't play in the playoffs, even though you're theoretically like injured and on a minutes restriction and trying to fight for your team, but then also potentially like re-aggravating that. And maybe now you tear your abdomen or I don't really know how else it could get worse, but like maybe you tear something and then now your like opening night is in jeopardy and that potentially impacts your free agency. So I think second round would be the earliest he comes back. Ryan Lucas, thank you for the super chat. If he's willing, do you think LA is considering CP3? I haven't heard that, but it's interesting for a variety of reasons. I think, just low-hanging fruit here. He's part of the Banana Boat crew, and there's a built-in relationship and rapport with LeBron, who, while like the Lakers have not necessarily prioritized LeBron this year, and there's been a shift in that with Luka and Austin being out for now, like they kind of have to prioritize LeBron, and that would be a really interesting way to do that. He also has the rapport and relationship with JJ Redick, and both guys have complimented each other in terms of being sickos and just how much they love basketball and how much they compete and love competing. So he does have a couple of important relationships with important Lakers people, but I also think about the way that things ended with the Clippers was a bit concerning in terms of he is arguably the greatest player in franchise history. It's between him and Blake Griffin and Kawhi Leonard. and he was returning to the Clippers for his swan song and for his retirement tour. And things got so bad there, with all the feedback basically being like the team did not want to hear from Chris Paul, and he was overstepping boundaries and being Chris Paul, but being Chris Paul in a 41 or 40-year-old body on his last legs. And guys are just like, we don't want this dude here. So, and it got to the point where Ty Lue was like just sick of it. And it seemed like Kawhi was kind of sick of it too. So I'm just like, do you want to throw that potential grenade into the Lakers locker room 2 days before the season ends? Like, I know he's the point guard and he has been known for his leadership for to a large degree, but feels like he's not been able to turn it off. And I just, despite his relationships with JJ and LeBron, I just don't know if the Lakers would want to potentially deal with that headache 2 days before the playoffs start. I also think there's another element here of, we already talked about some of the defensive liabilities, and Chris in his prime was a really good, some seasons like all defense level guy, especially with the ball pressure and steals and whatnot. Like one of the best thieves of all time, right? And one of the best steals guys ever, but he's 6 feet tall and he's 40. And so there's a real limitation. Like, he was not playing well with the Clippers. We saw the Clippers season take off after they got rid of him. And it's like, I don't know, like, could he learn the playbook in an hour? Yeah, I think he could. He's that smart. He's that cerebral. He's that level of basketball genius. But could he click? Like, the Lakers had a chance. They could have done something earlier in the season to potentially sign him, and they chose not to. I think it's unlikely, but crazier things have happened, and he does have the rapport with JJ and LeBron. I just think adding a 6 foot defensive liability and curmudgeon into your locker room 2 days before the playoffs could be could have some downside. Miss Optimist, thank you for the super chat. LAL have been underestimating what LeBron brings to the table for years now, and will learn that the hard way. This sounds ominous, but I know you're a big LeBron fan. Yeah, I mean, I would say the only thing I would say to this is that I think LeBron has been empowered. Like, there was a clear shift, obviously, post-Luka trade, right? And it went from, I mean, the whole theme of last season was actually supposed to be like, and LeBron talked about it over the summer and at Media Day, and it was this whole narrative of LeBron's handing the keys to AD, and AD is the franchise player, and it's time for LeBron to pass the baton to him, right? And AD had a really strong start to the season, but went down a couple times and went down again in January, and then it ended up being back on LeBron to carry things by himself, or by himself as the lone star. And then they make the Luka trade, and then there's a shift to playing Luka being the number one and just adjusting the offense around him. This year's been a bigger shift, right? And I don't think it helped that LeBron was injured to start the season, missed the first 14 games. I do think there's an alternate universe where LeBron's healthy to start the season, and maybe Austin doesn't pop the same way, or just like the hierarchy is a little bit different. But it's like LeBron's out, Austin pops, Luka even goes out, and like Austin's still playing well, still carrying the offense. And then it just kind of shifted things, I think, in a way that led to some of the growing pains they had throughout the course of the season. But I would say, if you want to frame this in the Lakers are underestimating LeBron, I would frame that more with this season than prior seasons. Now you could maybe say they took him for granted, or they could have done more to support him or build better rosters around him. I would not disagree with that, but I don't think, like, LeBron has always been the number one or number two, or even with AD, I would say it was more like a 1A, 1B, but frankly, it was more like LeBron was the 1A, right? And was finals MVP in 2020. And like, even when they tried to push AD as like the guy, LeBron is such a force and so great that it didn't really matter how, like, even if there were stretches where I think AD was better and AD was more of the number one or more of the 1A. it still was like LeBron. LeBron is like the guy, right? And LeBron is just he is like a solar system unto himself, where everywhere he goes, there's all eyes on him, and it's what is he thinking, how's he feeling, what's he saying, and like that's just been his career. So I would say if this sentiment to me applies more to this year than prior years, at least from an, because it's not like LeBron was being marginalized before. Like the Lakers, I mean, again, he's been in the MVP conversation for years. He's been first team, second team All NBA guy for years. It's not, I wouldn't agree with that to previous years, but I would say to this year seems to be like that was, part of what was going on. Keon Park, thank you for the super chat. We all want Smart and Kennard back, but if they get better contracts from other teams, therefore they leave like DFS Rockets, would that be a bad summer for the Lakers? Not really replaceable players. Depends on what they replace them with. I think losing both of them would be disastrous. I think we could add Rui to this conversation, and I think between the three, my answer in terms of who I would prioritize was already Smart, Kennard, Rui. But now that we've seen Kennard, I can't even say his name. Now that we've seen Kennard in an expanded role, and that he can expand his role, not that he's not going to do this when Luka and Austin are back, and if LeBron's back or they add someone else or whatever, like he's still going to be more of who he was before. But now that that's there and that you have someone who can assume more usage if necessary, that's a very valuable thing, because not all players can do it. I think there's this notion out there that any role, guys can assume more usage. It's just often not going to go well. Like with Luke, he's been very effective and he's been awesome in this role. I think what it's done for me more is like distance him from Rui. And before, part of my logic was like, okay, well, Luke's probably going to make like half as much as Rui. I don't even know if that's the case anymore. But regardless, like between the two of who's been more impactful in this like new version of the team, I don't think it's close. I think it's clearly been Kennard. And even going back to more recently, like I think that they've kind of traded who's the more impactful bench player. They've gone back and forth on that. But really, if you look at the Lakers bench offense and the offense in general, it dramatically changed when they added Luke Kennard. And there's a clear correlation there. And I do think there's some real causation from Luke's particular skill set. So I think in an ideal world, you could bring back Marcus, Luke, and Rui and fit them all under the cap and bring back LeBron and still add another player or two. That's just not really realistic here. So I think if you have to prioritize them, I would go Marcus, Luke, Rui. And again, I think before it was pretty close for me with Luke and Rui, and it was almost more of a value thing of just like Luke making less. Now I think it's just, in terms of who's more important, I would lean Luke right now. Pinty23, thank you for the super chat. Lonzo Ball, Ben Simmons, Cole Anthony, Spencer Dinwiddie. Lonzo, I just don't think it's there anymore. I just think too many lower extremity injuries. Ben Simmons is a fisherman, and if you think Vando would frustrate you offensively sometimes, Ben Simmons will say, hold my beer there. And then Cole Anthony actually is the guy among this, or from this list, that I'm the most intrigued by. I think he should be on an NBA roster, and I think he's more of a fringe rotation guy on like a good team, but I think I would say if I'm giving anyone a chance here, it'd be him. Then Dinwiddie, I think he hasn't been as good the last couple of years, so to me, he's more of a fringe roster guy. But Cole Anthony to me is a legit NBA player who I like the most out of those four. Reeve Strongest Soldier, thank you for the super chat. JJ Redick should be more in Coach of the Year shouts. Yeah, I mean, I've tried to highlight it recently when I've talked about Coach of the Year, when I've talked about the job JJ's done, but I think it's a great point. I think the kind of the toughest thing for him is that you just have two teams in the like coach of the year is usually one of two things, right? It's either the best, like the coach of the best team, and if you have like a historic season, or maybe you make a leap from like, for I think an example of this would be like next year, if the Lakers win 60 games and they're the 1 or 2 seed, I think JJ will definitely be getting coach of the year buzz, if not potentially be the favorite. But it's usually like you're ascending to a certain level of like 58 plus wins, 60 plus wins, and you finally have that season where you assert yourself at a certain level and you win the MVP. And it's like, one of the best coaches in the league, best team, second best team, third best team, whatever, and like you win coach of the year. Or, which I think tends to be more the case, is a situation where it's which team achieved above preseason expectations and the most. And especially if you can get to like, if you can get to that 60 wins or 55 plus wins. So I think the biggest thing working against JJ right now is San Antonio was a Vegas play-in team. They've won 62 games and might win 63. Detroit, a lot of people had in that 4, 5, 6 range. They've been the 1 seed all season and might win 60 games. So it's not even like a knock on JJ or his coaching. I just think, I think the Lakers over under was 46.5. They're going to win 52 or 53. That's a great boost. And when you also factor in who's been out and how much time Luka's missed, how much time Austin's missed, how much time LeBron's missed, how much time some of the role players have missed, that's even more impressive. But I think San Antonio's was like a little bit above 500, a 42 to 62, or let's just say it was 42, 43 to 62 versus 46 to 52, 53. It's a different level. So I think the thing working against him is like the guys who win coach of the year or are perceived to be the best coaches are often the coaches whose teams win by like 10 to 15 to 20 games above the preseason projections. You could also throw in Joe Mazzulla. I actually think Joe Mazzulla is probably going to win because a lot of people had Boston as a playing team in the East, and they're going to win high 50s. Now, with the Lakers, like it's a little trickier because I think Vegas was higher on the Lakers than a lot of analysts were. If you look at a lot of analysts had the Lakers in that 6 to 8 range. So through that lens, the Lakers achieved more. But I also think, like, again, if it's San Antonio's the 2 seed, Detroit's the 1 seed, like that's naturally Boston's the 2 seed. I think the Lakers would have to be a top 2 seed really to be, or JJ, the Lakers have to be a top 2 seed for JJ to be competing with those coaches. Now, I think if you want to put him on the ballot, he has a legit, it's legitimate. If you want to advocate for him to win, I think that's legitimate as well. I think the top 3 is going to be Mazzulla, Bickerstaff, and Mitch Johnson. Maybe Mark Dagnall gets some love as they've been one of the most injured teams in the league, and he's going to win 65 games or 64, whatever. But I think JJ should for sure be in the top 5 conversation, and I don't see him being mentioned consistently. The Wannabe GMs podcast. Thank you for the super chat. Predict Bron's next contract, please, and thanks. This is really, really tough to do. I would say I'm somewhere between like 1 year, 15 million, 1 year, 20 million. Maybe it's a 1+1, and it's like, but maybe it's a lower number, but they give him the 1+1. So he's got the de facto no trade clause, and he's got the extra year if he wants it. But I'd be surprised if it's above 20 million just from a practicality roster building perspective. It's not like, the version of LeBron we're seeing now is worth more than 20 million, but even the version of LeBron that was the third option was worth more than 20 million. If you're just looking at his production and value, it's just, if the Lakers sign him to anything higher, they are really limiting their ability to build out the rest of the roster. And for as great as March was, this is still a roster I think that needs several pieces, like 1 to 2 more starters at least, and a couple more bench rotation guys. And you're not going to add 3 to 4 rotation guys if you're spending half or more of your cap space on LeBron. So I think it's just the reality of the Lakers' financial situation. And so I would say somewhere in the $15 to $20 million range. I'll say 20, but I think it's somewhere in there. But again, maybe I'll give you 2 answers of maybe like a 1 year, $20 million deal, or maybe 2 years, 30, but it's a 1+1. He's got a player option on the second year, but less money, but more flexibility for him, and the de facto no trade clause by the contract structure. Peter, thank you for the super chat. Been to 11 NBA arenas. My top 5 are Intuit, Golden 1, MSG, United Center. Also, why is Detroit so disrespected as a tier 1 60-win team? You are on the Detroit stuff. I think it's a combination of a couple of things with Detroit. There's just an unproven nature to it, and now you could say like last year they started to prove it at a competitive first round series with New York, but I think we have enough. Like, to me, I don't agree with the framing with Detroit, but we do have a track record of, like, I think about what was it, the 2015 Hawks as like a perfect example of there are these paper tigers from the regular season of, they win a certain amount of games, they profile as a contender, but you put them in a playoff series and like they nearly lose in round 1, and then they maybe get their butt kicked in round 2. And it's like, yeah, they were the 1 seed, but they weren't that scary. I feel like there's an element of, I don't think that of Detroit to that degree. But I think there's a lot of that out there of just like Detroit's sort of a paper tiger, and they just don't have enough shooting. And outside of Cade and Jalen Duren, and I think you could throw Osar Thompson in like for his defense, but like more so from an offensive perspective, like outside of Cade and Duren, Dennis Jenkins is playing out of his mind right now. But like I think there's a lack of guys you like really fear. Like I don't think people are really fearing Tobias Harris and Duncan Robinson and some of Javonte Green and whatnot. So I think it's like, they might fear some of those guys in a fight, but like, in terms of like, especially compared to Boston, New York, people are still in love with Cleveland, although I'm out in Cleveland. So I think they're to me, they're a tier 2 contender. I think right now there are 4 teams that I think Jason tweeted this out with his contenders, and he said 95%. I might even go a little bit higher, but I think he had like OKC, San Antonio, Boston, Denver. I think I might roughly agree with that. I might actually flip Boston to second just because I think they're more likely to make it out of the East than San Antonio is to make it out of the West because of OKC. But I think it's like 98% probably that the champion is one of those 4 teams. Like I think it's a pretty high probability that because I think even if Detroit somehow makes the finals, I think they lose to OKC or San Antonio or whoever comes out of the West. Whereas I think Boston is the only team that could actually look at OKC or San Antonio or Denver in the face and say, we can beat you, and actually beat them. I don't think it's New York. I don't think it's Detroit, and I don't think it's Cleveland. So I think Detroit's going to make the conference finals. I would pick Boston or New York, but likely Boston over Detroit in a conference finals. Great list of arenas. I would say, so it's tough to, like, are we factoring in how nice the arena is? Because that list is going to be different than like the crowd, or are we just saying like overall experience, factoring in arena and crowd? Because, for example, like MSG is near the top of my list, but it's more about like the history of the arena. You're in New York. They got like just the presentation of the game is incredible, and you got the Celebrity Row, which is always fun, and just seeing all the people who are there. And MSG is like, it's a fun experience even as a media member. But like in terms of how nice the arena is, I would say it's probably average to even below average. Whereas like Golden 1 is one of the nicest arenas, but it's in Sacramento and it's the Kings, and like it's different, right? So Intuit, very nice arena, but also I would, at least in the games I've been, like the crowd hasn't been that crazy outside of the wall. United Center, that's the Josh Giddey shot. I'll never forget that. I'll say crowd wise, I mean, TD got like Boston is up there. New York is up there. San Antonio gets, I mean, OKC is actually insane. OKC is pretty loud. Philly, it's not even the crowd's loud, but like the Philly, the in arena music and like the speaker system in Philly is like deafening. It's actually like bad. But I like your list though. Your list is pretty much up there for me. And then Peter follows up. JB 67% on Kalshi for Coach of the Year. He's very underrated. Yeah, I personally, I think I'd go Missoula, but I don't see how that grew. I mean, they've had Tatum back for a few weeks now, or a couple weeks, whatever, 4 weeks, but I don't see how that group won 50 plus games in the East. I think that's a very limited group on paper. And I give more of that credit to Joe Mazzulla than Jaylen Brown. I think the Jaylen Brown MVP stuff's lunacy. Alma, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, not that it's realistic, but what would Portland want for someone like Kamara, great defender, and can shoot, good contract too? I've heard I've reported this before, so please don't aggregate me. I've already said this, but maybe I'll get aggregated. I've heard that the asking price for him is like minimum 2 first-round picks to even get a conversation. So that one, actually, I mean, Kamara, I would think, if we're comparing him to Herb Jones, I would rather have Kamara than Herb Jones. I think he's been a better defender the last couple of years, and he's actually turned himself into a respectable shooter. You look at the last couple of years, shooting 37% on threes back-to-back years, but scaled up his volume from 4.6 attempts last year to 7.2 this year. That's legit volume. And like I would say, I'd rather have a guy shooting 37% on 7 attempts than like 41% on like 3 attempts. Like that, that's legit, just legit volume, legit. Like Tamani Kamara is in the conversation, I think, for like best 3-and-D guy in the league. Because even if you compare him, I think we use 3-and-D loosely, right? Like, OG Anunoby is like kind of considered a 3-and-D guy, even though the 3-point shot isn't reliable with him. And, it goes up and down. But Tamani Kamara to me is actually like, what if we're just judging it on like 3-and-D of your role is spot up, catch and shoot, be a shooter, and then defend at an all defense level. Tamani Kamara is on the short list of best guys in the league. And I do think above Herb Jones. I just don't think it's realistic. And he's a guy that, I mean, if I'm Portland, even the 2 firsts, it's like, I'm going to then look for a player to try to replace Tamani Kamara and probably not find as good of a player. So he's a stud. He's a little bit older than you would think. He's 25 already and only played 3 years, but Tamani Kamara, he's a beast. Civic Citizen aggregators when Buha says, please to aggregate me. I'm really glad I missed the whole OnlyFans conversation in the chat. I did not look. I really try to stay away from that part. LeGoat James, Jovan, do the Lakers need more toughness by signing Pat Bev or Jay Crowder? I think they could use more toughness in general, although I think I've been more impressed with their toughness and physicality lately, and I think Marcus has been a big part of that. Vando, when he plays, Jake, I think they have several guys leading the way on that front, but not Pat Bev or Jay Crowder. I don't think those guys have been NBA-level players for a couple of years. Perry asks, is it realistic the Lakers look into trading for Anthony Davis in the summer as the big addition? I don't see it. I think time needs to pass for some of the wounds to heal with the situation. I think it's still relatively fresh, and at least from the AD side. And also, I think it's a massive risk with just his injury history, and I mean he's not been healthy since the trade. So looking at the contract plus the injury history, I would be pretty skeptical of that. Reeves Strongest Soldier, Jovan, what do you think about starter Kennard 13.75 on 54% true shooting since AR and Luka went down? What's crazy is the 7, because that's from the 16 rebound game, which I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was tied for either the most or second most rebounds a guard had this season in a game, which is wild. Might have been second most, but that's insane. 54% true shooting percentage, you want to see that go up. Like, he's not been the most efficient, and I talked about that recently of just the challenges of scaling up. It's really difficult to scale up your usage and maintain a certain level of efficiency, which is why I think guys like Austin, Luka, LeBron, you see when guys are in and out of the lineup and they have to do more and they're able to maintain that efficiency. It's really impressive. And I think that's the biggest thing for me between stars and role players is a role player can take more shots and get more production, but it's going to come at an efficiency cost. The best players in the league can scale up and maintain the efficiency, or maybe there's like a slight drop off, but it's not dramatic. Whereas Luke, obviously, I mean, for the season, his true shooting percentage is, I don't know off the top of my head, but I would assume it's got to be mid to high 60s. If for the season, 66% true shooting percentage in LA, 69% for the season. Nice. 71. He shot 71% in Atlanta, now 66. So yeah. But yeah, I mean, before these last few games, he was in the mid to high 60s. So this has dipped it a little bit, but. Oh, so 7. Okay, so 7 assists. Good to know. But the 5 rebounds is being carried by the 16 because he's not a good rebounder, but he had an incredible rebounding game. Civic Citizen, I saw a graphic that Luke had a more career high rebounds compared to Triple J. Yeah, and look, I caught some flack from some people for saying I would not trade Austin for Triple J, but I stand by that, and I just think he's a great defender, former defensive player of the year, but I don't want a big man who averages 5 rebounds a game. Eli, also losing legs faster, bringing up ball, running offense. Yeah. I mean, that's part of my point with Luke is just, I think we've, the point I made a couple shows ago was like, you rarely see, like we're seeing him go from being basically a spot up, catch and shoot movement guy with a little bit of that secondary playmaking, penetration, ball handling, etc., to like at times being the number one option from a ball handling playmaking perspective and carrying a much heavier load than he was before. And you see it does affect his legs, and he's playing more minutes and taking more shots and all that stuff. But like, it's fatiguing. That's why I think the thing I said with the Bam Adebayo situation is like, actually the most impressive thing for me in the Bam Adebayo situation wasn't even the 83 points. It was like, it's fatiguing to take that many shots and to still have the stamina to keep going into the fourth quarter and racking up that many points. Not talking about the ethical nature of it, just like the actual just like workload of doing that is very fatiguing. And so, yeah, I mean, we're seeing it now with Luke where it's affecting his efficiency. I think he'll bounce back and in the playoffs be more efficient, but certainly it's difficult. Bosnian Bear, thank you for the super chat. Hey, brate, just want to say keep up the great work with the show. Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate the super chat. I appreciate you guys with the patience with me not going live last night, but went live tonight. Went 2 hours. We just hit the 2 hour mark, and I will be going live Sunday. I will be going live multiple days next week. I'll be going live after every game, and we'll keep it going for as long as it goes. And then I'll continue to go live, whether it's Lakers win the championship or Lakers lose, and then I'll be going live after that. So not going anywhere, and continue to grow out the show, and really excited about the future. Lakers all day. Pelinka did make some deals. Look at the Kennard deal for Gabe Vincent. Look what you made me do. I can't believe I'm defending Pelinka. Yeah, that was a good trade. There's no when I've you could throw Luke Kennard in that. I was more so talking about like free agency and some of the roster decisions, but you could also include. And I don't know if I'm in. Sometimes I know there's side conversations going on in the chat, but what I was talking about earlier about the Lakers like struggles with identifying some talent the same way that some other teams do. I think you can definitely include the Luke deal as a win. And I've mentioned that at times this season, but I think it's worth continuing to reiterate. I think a big thing I've talked about, a big thing we've talked about on Lakers Collective is ultimately, I think guys are slotted into a little bit of bigger roles than they should be outside of the big three. And if you can improve the middle of the roster and slot guys a little bit lower, then you're cooking with grease. Paul Perinello, this podcast is the best. Paul, you know what? I appreciate it. I will take the compliment from you. I know that we don't always see eye to eye, but I love the compliment here, and I love the optimism, and I appreciate it. Lakers all day clarifies he's not going at me, he's going at someone else. All right, so I didn't mean to hop into your side conversation. Reef Strong Soldier, I'm not going yet, but I appreciate you. This is okay. Gonna take a couple more, and then I will wrap. 3H Hoops. What is the maximum you would pay Rui? I won't take him back for more than $13 million a year. I think the most important thing within this answer for me is, or I would say it's twofold, although they're related. Like first, what's going on with LeBron? If LeBron is back, my appetite for bringing Rui back is lower, or at least my ideal price for Rui is lower. And then two, and potentially related, if LeBron is back, like, are you bringing in someone else? Or if LeBron is not back, are you now shifting toward the Peyton Watson or is there another four out there that you're trying to add? And then, I'd rather have Peyton Watson than Rui, for example. So I think it's context based in the sense of if LeBron is back, I just think if you're bringing back LeBron and Rui, you are kind of locking in your four spot, and it can work, but we've kind of seen that movie the last couple of years, and I would like to mix up the four spot a little bit more and add in a little bit more defense and motor and rebounding and whatnot. If LeBron's gone, then it's a different conversation, and then I still want a starting four and Rui in a bench role, but I would be more willing to sign Rui to a longer term deal or a more expensive deal. I guess I could even add in a third option here. What happens with Marcus and Luke? To an earlier question about what if you lose Luke and Marcus? If you lose Luke and Marcus, maybe you still keep LeBron, but like now you have that extra money. And if it's like Rui versus just a worse player, I obviously would rather have Rui. And he does fill an important need as a shooter and second side attacker, shot maker. So I think it's difficult to say without having the proper context of, is LeBron on the roster? Are there any better alternatives, whether Peyton Watson or otherwise? And or what's up with Marcus and Luke? And are they coming back? How much are you using an exception on them? Are you like what's going on with them? Right. So I guess in a vacuum, I would say, I think you're kind of in the right range. Like I would consider Rui up to the non-taxpayer MLE, but which is 15, like Lakers don't have it, but just that general price point, I would consider him up to like 15 million, but I would not go above that unless a couple of those things have panned out where maybe LeBron's gone and there's no good alternative, or maybe LeBron's back, but there's no good alternative, and Luke and or Marcus is gone, then I might ramp that up a little bit. But I think it's tough to justify more than like $13 to $15 million for him, because if you also look at it from a roster perspective, if you're paying him, let's just say like $17 million, you also have to think about like what I think LeBron's going to get more than Rui if they both stay. So I don't think LeBron's going to be cool with getting less than him. So if he's getting 17 and LeBron's getting 20, that's over half your cap space right there. And you could be in a scenario where your highest paid players are Luka, Austin, LeBron, Rui, and we've seen JJ go away from Rui as the starter, and like that just didn't work with Luka and LeBron. So now Rui's like your sixth man as your fourth highest paid player, and I just don't think that's like the optimal way to build a roster, or particularly this roster. So if he's willing to take a discount, or there's not really great alternatives, I'm open to a bigger contract, but I would say I would probably agree with you that it's more of like in that $13 to $15 million range. Lakers all day. Jovan 2 games shouldn't skyrocket Luke Kennard's value. I don't think it's skyrocket. Like I've been penciling in Luke as like a $7 million player. I just said it might go up to 8 or 10, but so I don't think that. I mean, it could be semantics here. I don't think that's skyrocketing it. What I will say with it is like Luke has been handed the keys to the like. LeBron is the number one option, right? But Luke has been the number 2 option, and it's been a pretty big gap between, like if you're just looking at total usage of dribbling, passing, time on ball, touches, all those things, it's LeBron and Luke, and a big gap to anybody else. And again, like we saw some flashes from Luke as at times a caretaker with the offense, or at times as a guy who can, catch a pass, attack a closeout, get the blender going. Like he's good at that, but he's been in an entirely different role of bring the ball up, initiate the offense, run pick and rolls, attack out of pick and roll. Like how many pick and rolls has he been running before these last few games? Not many, or not at least in like the conventional, like everybody spread out, let Luke try to attack. That's not how the Lakers have been operating. So to me, I would say it's 4 games, not 2, but I think he's shown something and shown it at like a reasonably high level, especially for like a guy who's perceived to be just a shooter, and also part of what I said was like, if he continues this in the playoffs, if he doesn't have a good playoffs, then his value might actually decrease, right? It just depends how he performs. But I think he could justify 8 to 10 million with this level. Like if you give Luke Kennard the keys to the offense and he's dropping 19 and 5 and 7 or whatever the number, 15, 5 and 7, like, I mean, he's been playing a pretty good level. Eli, Jovan, do you think the starting lineups differentiate depending on who we match up in the first round? Do you think JJ will be afraid to tweak the starting line? I think JJ will be quicker with adjustments. I'd be surprised and disappointed if JJ is not quicker with adjustments in the first round series. And this is where I've talked about this general. I talked about this after the OKC game, and I've talked about this post Luka AR injuries. At this point, I think JJ tried to send this message a little bit. At this point, throw contracts out the window, throw ego out the window, throw feelings out the window, throw everything out the window. This needs to be about who are the best 9 players or 8 players on that given night for that given matchup. And DA, if you're going to loaf around and just run up the floor or jog up the floor in the first shift, you're out. And we're going to play Jaxson, or we're going to play Drew Timme if he's on the roster, or we're going to play Maxi Kleba, right? Or Rui, I don't know if Rui's going to be starting or coming off the bench, but regardless of it, if Rui's kind of just being spacey out there, then Rui, you're getting pulled. If Vando is having some of the mistakes that he could have on offense, you're getting pulled. Like, but that, like Luke, if you're not going to rotate on defense or box out, you're getting pulled. Like, it's got to be a certain standard of, with maybe the exception of LeBron just being, if you pull LeBron, you might just die. You're not going to have enough. With that maybe exception, everybody has to be locked in, dialed in, and all on the same page. Otherwise, this is not going to work. Like, the Lakers need to be greater than the sum of their parts here. That's like, because the sum of their parts, like, if we're judging the sum of their parts, they should probably be swept in a Houston or Minnesota series. If you're just judging the collective talent of the two sides. But I think with LeBron playing the way he's playing and LA potentially looking like greater than the sum of their parts here the last couple of games, I think they can extend a series. But it is going to require JJ being aggressive with the adjustments. You don't want to overreact, but I would say he was underreacting and slow to react against Minnesota, and he's got to be better with that. Cami, what if JJ runs a 5-man rotation again in the playoffs? It's not going to go well. And he will have questions to answer to, including from yours truly. Cami asks again, if Luka's making $49 million next year, how do you pay AR $40+ million? He's not worth almost the same as Luka. So one big thing to remember with contracts is it's always about contracts are signed at different times. So, like, yes, Austin is not worth almost as much as Luka. And I would also argue Luka's underpaid. Luka should be making, at least if you look at like max contract standards, $60+ million, 65, and he's going to have, he signed the extension, but he's going to have another opportunity in a couple of years to get that super max, or like, his equivalent of the super max. But the cap keeps going up, and like, for example, I think Shea, I don't know the exact number right now, but like Shea is making $36 million this year, something like that. And I mean, Shea's obviously worth far more than that. I don't know why this isn't popping up. Here we go. Yeah, Shea's. So it's kicking in. No, it's kicking in 2 years. Yeah, Shea's currently making $38 million. Next year he's making 40. But then his extension kicks in 60.6, 65, 70, 75. So sometimes it's also like the timing of, there are guys who signed contracts 2-3 years ago where it was considered to be a max at the time, but they're making 40, 45, 50, where the new version of the max is going to continue to grow, and it's going to be 60, 65, 70, 75. One day we're going to have an $80 million player. One day we're going to have a $100 million player. And so I wouldn't necessarily, like, I get where you're coming from, but I wouldn't necessarily judge it. If they sign the same contract at the same time, that's a different conversation. But Luka's on a previous contract where Austin's is going to be current based on current cap projections. It's just the salaries continue to rise. So I know there's a sticker shock there, but I think it's a little bit different. But in terms of, I mean, how it works is you just go over the cap and you use his bird rights and his cap hold. Alma notes, Booker signed a crazy extension too. Yeah, the Booker one, like, I like Booker, but I don't know if Booker could be a true number one, and he's getting paid like a true number one. I am Hans De Leon. Did they ever say what was wrong with Stu Lance? No, that they have not, and that's been unfortunate. And Lawrence Tanner, the PA guy, has also been out. So a couple of the biggest voices around the Lakers have not been present lately, and it's been unfortunate. But I don't really want to end on a somber note there. Xander asks, is Jalen Duren realistic for us or no? I don't think so. I think you'd have to throw a lot at him. I mean, he might make second team All-NBA. He's at least going to make third team All-NBA. So, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to go, I think, for at least 35+ million, if not 40. So he would cost a lot of the cap space. And I think it'd be tricky to fit him and LeBron. And then you're potentially losing Marcus, Luke, and Rui, or keeping only one of those guys. So it's going to be tough. But Civic Citizen, Scotty Barnes this summer, that would be something. I would not mind that. I would like that. But I'm going to wrap here. Appreciate you guys for rocking with me for over a couple of hours. Just felt it was right to go a little bit longer tonight. with me taking yesterday off. But I will be back a little over 36 hours. I'll be back in less than 48 hours after Lakers Jazz. We will know the Lakers seeding. We will know the first round matchup. We'll do a little mini preview, and then I'm going to be diving into film. I will tell you guys now, doing a show with Crangus on Wednesday. It's our annual playoff preview. We go into the questions on both sides of offensive question for each team, defensive question for each team, X factor for each team, go into some of the data, and then we make our series prediction. So we did that in 2024, did it in 2025. Looking forward to doing it in 2026. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you guys. I'll be back Sunday evening. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Jay asks, do we know what day the schedule for the playoffs comes out? Yes, it comes out in chunks because it's partly determined by the play-in teams, and then depending on what cities they're in, it might impact the schedule a little bit. But we should have part of the schedule, if not, it's changed year to year, so it might even be the full schedule, but it'll be at least part of the schedule, if not the full schedule. Maybe like the first 4 games scheduled, and then it'll be like TBD game 5, 6, 7. But we should know the first chunk of the schedule by Sunday evening. They will have that that night for the matchups that are set, right? Obviously, 1 seed, 2 seed still have to play the play-in team, but 3, 6, and 4, 5, I believe will be set. Well, they'll be set, but I believe will be coming out that night. So we'll know in less than 48 hours who the Lakers are playing and at least part of when they're playing them. But again, shout out to you all. Appreciate you guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will talk to you in a couple days.